My name is George. I'm 70 years old, and for most of my life I've been a man who never asked for help. I worked with my hands, carried heavy boxes, fixed things around the house, and took pride in being the one people could count on. But the truth is, I can't even remember the last morning I woke up without pain. It started as a small discomfort, the kind you shrug off and blame on a bad night's sleep. But over time it grew, slowly, steadily, until it took control of me. Each morning I'd sit at the edge of my bed rubbing my lower back, waiting for the stiffness to fade. It never did. It just lingered, like an unwelcome guest that decided to move in for good. I remember one morning in particular. The air was cold, and the sun had barely risen. I tried to put on my socks, but halfway through a sharp pain shot down my spine. It felt like a lightning bolt, sudden, cruel, impossible to ignore. I froze, gripping the edge of the bed, afraid to move, and for a moment I thought, is this it? Is this how I'm going to spend the rest of my life? You know that feeling when your body betrays you? When something you used to do without thinking becomes an impossible task? That morning, I realized I was no longer the man I used to be, and that scared me more than the pain itself. At first I tried to hide it. When my daughter Susan called, I'd pretend everything was fine. "Yes, sweetheart, just a bit tired," I'd say, forcing a laugh. But she could hear it in my voice, the strain, the hesitation, and I could hear it in hers, the worry she was too kind to show. Even my grandson Ethan noticed. He's only 9, but he's sharp. "Grandpa, why don't you come play catch with me anymore?" he asked one Sunday. I looked at the ball in his little hands and felt my heart twist. How could I tell him that standing for more than 10 minutes felt like torture? So I lied. "I'm just resting my back, buddy. Maybe later." But later never came. It hadn't come for months. Every day I moved slower. Tying my shoes became a battle. Getting out of the car felt like climbing a mountain. And at night, when the house was quiet, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was the beginning of the end. The thought crept in like a whisper. Maybe this is just what getting old feels like. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. This wasn't just age. This was pain. Real, unrelenting pain. The kind that eats away at your confidence, your patience, your spirit. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the mirror, shoulders hunched, eyes tired, and barely recognize myself. I used to walk with purpose. Now, I shuffled like a man twice my age. The worst part wasn't the pain itself. It was what it took from me. My independence, my joy, my sense of being alive. I tried painkillers, heating pads, creams that promised miracles. They helped for a day, sometimes 2, but the pain always came back. And every time it did, it felt stronger, like it was mocking me. I started canceling plans. Coffee with friends, too much walking. Family dinners, too long sitting. Even simple things like bending to pick up the mail became small acts of courage. And I hated that. I hated needing help. I hated the look of pity in people's eyes when they saw me wince. One night, after another failed attempt to sleep, I sat on the edge of my bed again. My back throbbed, my legs felt heavy, and my hands trembled slightly as I reached for the pain cream. It didn't help. So I just sat there, staring at the dark, listening to the clock tick. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Every second felt like a reminder of the life I was losing. That's when the thought came, quiet but piercing. Is this how it ends? Not with a bang, but with pain? I don't know if you've ever had that moment, when you realize that your world has quietly shrunk around you. When you start saying no to things you once loved, not because you want to, but because your body won't let you. If you've been there, I understand you, because I was there too. It's strange how pain changes you. It humbles you. It teaches you that even the smallest movement, a stretch, a breath, a smile, can mean everything. But it also makes you desperate. And that desperation, it pushes you to search for answers in places you'd never thought to look. I didn't know it then, but that morning, the one when my back gave up, wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else, something unexpected, something that would change the way I saw my body, my pain, and my life. But back then, all I knew was this. I was tired, I was hurting, and I was scared. And you? Do your mornings start with pain too? Do you ever wake up and wonder if the day will be kind to your body? If you do, stay with me, because my story didn't end there. In fact, that's where it truly began. Pain has a way of stealing things quietly. Not all at once, not with a loud crash, but slowly, almost politely, until one day you realize most of your life is gone. That's what happened to me. It started with skipping one walk, then another. The short trips to the grocery store became a chore. Even standing long enough to cook breakfast felt like punishment. I used to love mornings. The smell of coffee, the sound of birds outside the kitchen window, the comfort of sunlight on my hands as I read the paper. Now mornings felt like a battle I didn't remember signing up for. There were days when I'd lean against the counter, pretending to look for something in the cupboard, just to hide the fact that I couldn't stand straight. The ache in my lower back would pulse like a heartbeat, sharp and deep, as if my spine was made of rusted metal, and no matter how many stretches I did, no matter how carefully I moved, the pain always came back. Patient, loyal, merciless. It's funny how you start organizing your life around pain. I planned my days like a soldier planning for battle. How long can I sit before it hurts? How far can I walk before I have to stop? Every decision came with a calculation, a silent negotiation with my own body. My daughter kept telling me to see another doctor. She even booked appointments for me. "Dad, please just go," she said, her voice soft but firm. So I went. Again and again. Different specialists, different pills, different promises. They all said the same thing. It's normal for your age. But it didn't feel normal. It felt like I was disappearing, piece by piece, day by day. You see, pain doesn't just live in your back. It creeps into your thoughts, your confidence, your joy. It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you smaller, not in size, but in spirit. I stopped meeting my friends for coffee. I stopped driving to the lake, where I used to fish on quiet afternoons. The chair where I used to sit became empty, gathering dust. Sometimes I'd walk past it and think, that used to be my favorite place. Now it was just a memory, another thing pain had taken from me. My world got smaller. The house that once felt cozy now felt like a cage. Every step had to be measured, every move planned. And when you live like that long enough, you start to feel like a guest in your own home. Even the little things changed. The sound of laughter, once comforting, started to hurt. I'd hear my grandkids playing outside and feel torn between love and sadness. Love, because their joy reminded me of everything good in life. Sadness, because I couldn't join them anymore. The last time Ethan asked me to race him to the end of the yard, I laughed it off. But that laugh was hollow, a weak attempt to hide the truth. I couldn't even walk that far without pain. Sometimes late at night, I'd stand by the window and watch the streetlights flicker. I'd see people walking their dogs, couples holding hands, neighbors jogging. And I'd wonder what that felt like again. To move freely, to exist without fear of pain, to just be. And then there was the guilt, the kind that creeps in when you realize your pain doesn't only affect you, it affects everyone around you. My daughter stopped inviting me to family trips because she didn't want me to feel pressured. Ethan stopped asking me to play. And I knew. They were trying to protect me. But part of me wished they wouldn't. Because every time they did, it felt like I was being gently erased from their lives. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with chronic pain, not from being alone, but from feeling like no one truly understands. People mean well. They say things like, "You just need to stay active," or "Have you tried yoga?" But unless you felt that sharp, burning ache deep in your spine, the kind that steals your breath, you don't really get it. You don't know how humiliating it feels to have your own body betray you in front of others, to reach for a glass or bend slightly, and feel your muscles seize up like locked gears. I began to avoid mirrors. Every reflection showed me someone older than I felt inside, someone beaten down, slow, fragile. It's strange. When I looked at myself, I didn't see George anymore. I saw the shadow of who I used to be. And that's when it hit me. The pain wasn't just taking my mobility. It was taking me. It was stealing my laughter, my confidence, my sense of purpose. And no one warned me that could happen. No doctor told me that chronic pain doesn't just live in your bones. It lives in your heart. Sometimes I'd whisper to myself, I just want to feel like me again. Not the man who grimaces with every step. Not the man who says no to invitations. Just me. But I didn't know where that man had gone. There was one night, I remember it vividly, when I sat in my recliner, trying to watch TV, and the pain became so unbearable I had to turn it off. I just sat there in silence, staring at the empty screen. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly defeated. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was a quiet kind of surrender. It felt like I was fading, not dying, but slowly vanishing from the life I once had. Like a photograph left too long in the sun. And in that silence, I thought, maybe this is just who I am now. But deep down, a small voice whispered, what if it doesn't have to be? I didn't know it then, but that whisper, that tiny spark, would be the thing that saved me later. Because sometimes, even when you think you've lost everything, life finds a way to surprise you. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from exhaustion. That was the silence that filled my house that morning. The sky outside was pale gray, and the light creeping through the curtains made the room feel colder somehow. I tried to sit up, but my body refused to listen. A sharp electric pain shot down my spine, and I froze. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. It was as if my back had turned to stone, solid, immovable, merciless. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my ears. The sound of the clock ticked in the distance, steady and cruel. Tick-tock, tick-tock, time didn't care about my pain. It just kept moving, while I stayed stuck in the same spot, half sitting, half broken. I reached for the nightstand, trying to grab the bottle of painkillers. My fingers brushed against it, but the motion sent another bolt of pain through my lower back. I gasped. The bottle slipped, hit the floor and rolled away, scattering the pills under the bed. I just stared at them, tiny white dots against the dark floor, knowing I couldn't reach them. That image burned itself into my memory. Me, 70 years old, trapped in my own bed, watching helplessly as my last bit of control rolled out of reach. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not at first. Men of my generation weren't raised to cry. We were taught to grit our teeth, to walk it off. But that morning, when I realized I couldn't even put on my socks, something inside me cracked. The tears came quietly, the kind you try to hide even from yourself. I pressed my palms to my eyes, ashamed of how helpless I felt. It wasn't just the pain, it was what it represented. Losing control, losing strength, losing me. After a while, I managed to sit up, inch by inch, every movement a negotiation between pain and willpower. My back screamed with every breath. I shuffled toward the bathroom, leaning on the wall for support. My reflection in the mirror made me stop. The man staring back looked older than I remembered, shoulders slumped, face pale, eyes heavy with defeat. I whispered to that reflection, barely recognizing my own voice. What happened to you? No one answered. Of course no one did. I tried to smile, just to see if I could. It didn't work. That day, everything felt heavy. The chair, the floor, the air itself. Even the phone felt like it weighed 100 pounds when my daughter called. "Hi, Dad," she said. "How are you feeling today?" And I lied again. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just a bit stiff." But my voice betrayed me, trembling, tired. There was a pause on her end, the kind filled with worry and unspoken truth. "Dad," she said softly, "I'll come by later, okay?" I wanted to say no. I didn't want her to see me like that, hunched over, limping, old. But I couldn't stop her. When she arrived, I was sitting in the kitchen, pretending to read the newspaper. The truth? I hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. I was just staring at the same headline, unable to focus. When she saw me, her eyes softened. That mixture of pity and love that I hated. She tried to smile. "Hey, Dad." I smiled back weakly. But I saw the truth in her face. I looked worse than I thought. She made coffee, trying to keep things normal, but silence filled the room. Finally, she said, "You can't keep living like this. Please let me help." I shook my head. "There's nothing to be done. I've tried everything." Her eyes glistened. "You haven't tried everything." But I didn't want hope. Not that day. Hope felt cruel when your body betrayed you every morning. After she left, I sat there for hours, staring out the window. Rain began to fall, slow, steady drops against the glass. The world outside felt distant, almost unreachable, and I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe this is how life ends. Not with sickness or tragedy, but with slow, quiet surrender. That night, I didn't even try to sleep in bed. I stayed in the chair, afraid that if I lay down, I wouldn't be able to get up again. The pain throbbed like a pulse through my spine, spreading down to my legs. I could feel every beat of my heart echoing in my lower back. And for the first time, I truly thought, maybe it's time to give up. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the man I used to be. The man who built his own house. The man who lifted his kids onto his shoulders. The man who ran into the ocean with his wife, laughing as the waves crashed around them. That man felt like a stranger now, someone I used to know. And then in the dark, a thought whispered, "Is this the beginning of the end?" I didn't say it out loud, but the words stayed with me, echoing in my chest. They weren't just words, they were a confession. I was tired of fighting, tired of pretending, tired of waking up every day to a body that felt like it no longer belonged to me. When the first light of morning crept through the window, I didn't move. I just sat there staring at the floor, numb. The world outside was waking up, birds singing, cars passing. But inside, I felt nothing. No anger, no hope, just stillness. I didn't know it yet, but that quiet moment, that hollow emptiness, would become the turning point of my life. Because sometimes, when you finally hit the bottom, when you have nothing left to lose, that's when the right voice, the right word, or the right person appears. But that morning, all I knew was this. I couldn't keep living like that. Something had to change, or I'd disappear completely. It's strange how life brings answers when you've already stopped looking for them. I wasn't expecting anything that day. I wasn't even expecting to smile. But sometimes hope shows up disguised as something ordinary, like a casual chat over coffee. It was a Thursday afternoon, gray and chilly, the kind of day when everything feels heavier. I was sitting on the porch, wrapped in an old flannel blanket, watching the leaves fall. My neighbor, Clara, saw me from across the fence. She's one of those people who always seems to glow. Not in the fake way, but with that quiet energy that comes from kindness. She waved and walked over, carrying a basket. "George," she said, "you look like you could use some company." I laughed, or at least tried to. Company, maybe. A new spine, definitely. She smiled, that soft kind of smile that says, "I understand." Clara's known me for years. She used to see me fixing things in the yard, cutting wood, mowing the lawn. All the stuff I don't do anymore. Now she sees me sitting, watching the world, instead of being part of it. "What's going on with your back?" she asked gently. "Oh, same story," I said. "Pain that won't quit. Doctors say it's normal for my age, whatever that means." She tilted her head. "You know, my brother had the same problem. Could barely stand straight for months. Let me guess, I said. He got surgery? No, she replied, a little spark in her eyes. He found something different, something natural. I almost rolled my eyes. I'd heard that word so many times before. Natural. It usually meant a fancy label and an empty promise. But the way she said it, calm, genuine, without trying to convince me, made me pause. What was it? I asked. She set the basket down beside me and pulled out a small dark bottle. Black sesame oil, she said simply. I raised an eyebrow. Cooking oil? She laughed. That's what I thought too, but apparently it's been used for thousands of years in Asia for joint pain and inflammation. My brother started massaging his back with it every night. Warm, not hot. And within a few days he said he could move again without that stabbing pain. I leaned back, skeptical but curious. 3 days? That sounds like one of those internet stories. Clara shrugged. Maybe. But I saw it with my own eyes. He's out there gardening again, like he's 20 years younger. I smiled faintly. And where do I find this miracle oil of yours? You can get it at the health store downtown, she said. Or online if you don't want to go out. But you have to warm it a bit. That's the secret. The warmth helps it penetrate the muscles. Her words lingered. There was no pressure, no sales pitch, just a friend sharing something that worked for someone she loved. And maybe that's why I listened. She placed the bottle in my hand. Try it, she said softly. What do you have to lose? I turned it over, reading the label like it held the answer to a riddle. Black sesame oil, I murmured. It smelled faintly nutty, earthy, comforting somehow. I don't know, Clara, I said. I've tried so many things. I'm tired of being disappointed. She nodded. I know. But sometimes the simplest things are the ones that surprise us. Her voice was gentle but firm, the kind that sinks deep into your heart. Just give it 3 days, she added. If nothing changes, you can throw it away. 3 days. That didn't sound like much. And yet in that moment, it felt like a mountain to climb. But something in me, maybe the last spark of hope I had left, when whispered, why not? After she left, I sat there for a long time, holding that little bottle in my hands. It felt almost symbolic, like a tiny lifeline. The glass was cool, smooth, simple, nothing fancy, nothing miraculous, just real. That night, after my usual struggle to get ready for bed, I decided to try it. I poured a small amount into a bowl and warmed it gently, just as Clara said. The smell filled the room, rich, nutty, familiar somehow. I dipped my fingers in and rubbed it into my lower back. At first, nothing happened. Then a wave of warmth spread through my skin, not burning, not tingling, just soothing. For the first time in months, my muscles didn't feel like locked steel. I could breathe without flinching. It wasn't a miracle. The pain didn't vanish. But something felt different. A softness, a calm. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe the act of caring for myself again. Or maybe, just maybe, Clara was right. As I lay down, I realized something strange. I wasn't thinking about the pain anymore. For the first time in a long while, I fell asleep without counting the seconds between each throb of my spine. When I woke up the next morning, the light was streaming through the window. Usually, that was the moment I braced myself. The stretch, the stiffness, the pain. But this time, I moved. And it didn't feel like my back was breaking. The pain was still there, yes, but duller, quieter, like a storm moving off into the distance. I sat there, stunned. Could it really be working? It seemed impossible. And yet, I couldn't ignore the truth. I felt better. I picked up the bottle from the nightstand, still half in disbelief, and whispered, Clara, what did you do to me? Then I laughed, a real laugh, the first one in weeks. It echoed softly through the empty house, and for a moment, I felt alive again. And that's how it started. Not with a doctor, not with a prescription, but with a simple conversation over a fence. A moment of kindness, a drop of oil, and a spark of hope that would soon grow into something much bigger than I ever imagined. The first morning after I tried the black sesame oil, I almost didn't notice anything. Maybe that's the thing about healing. It rarely arrives with a fanfare. It's quiet, gentle, the kind of change that whispers instead of shouts. When I woke up, my back still ached, but something felt different. The pain wasn't screaming anymore. It was like it had taken a step back, as if my body for the first time in years was giving me room to breathe. I sat up slowly, expecting that familiar knife-like stab in my spine, but it didn't come. There was just a dull ache, manageable, tolerable. For a moment, I just sat there, my hands on my knees, afraid to move too much, afraid to break the spell. I remember whispering to myself, could this really be working? Then I laughed, a nervous, half-disbelieving laugh. After months of disappointment, even a small improvement felt like a miracle. That morning, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I made breakfast. Nothing fancy, just eggs and toast. But I stood at the stove without leaning on the counter. And when I reached for the coffee mug on the top shelf, I didn't wince. That simple act, reaching without pain, made me feel like I'd just climbed a mountain. As the coffee brewed, the smell filled the kitchen. Warm, comforting, familiar. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that, the small rituals that make mornings feel alive. For months, pain had stolen those moments from me. But now, standing there, spatula in hand, I felt a piece of myself returning. Later that day, my daughter Susan called. She asked how I was doing, and for once I didn't have to lie. I'm better, I said, hesitating, almost afraid to jinx it. She laughed softly. Better? What does that mean, Dad? It means, I said, I stood up this morning and didn't curse. We both laughed, really laughed. It felt good. That night, I followed Clara's instructions again. I warmed the oil gently and rubbed it into my lower back, massaging the sore spots. The warmth spread slowly like sunlight on my skin. It wasn't just the physical relief. It was the feeling that I was doing something for myself again, not waiting for pills or doctors, just listening to my body. Each day after that, I noticed something new. Tiny things that would seem insignificant to anyone else, but to me, they were proof that life was returning. On the second day, I managed to tie my shoes without sitting down. I can't explain how proud that made me feel. When pain takes away your independence, every small victory feels like freedom. I remember looking in the mirror that morning and saying softly, "You're getting there, old man." By the third day, I could walk around the block. It wasn't far, maybe 5 minutes, but the air felt different. Cool, fresh, alive. The sound of leaves crunching under my shoes, the warmth of the sun on my face. All those little details I'd forgotten how to appreciate came flooding back. Halfway through my walk, I saw Clara tending to her garden. She looked up and smiled. "Well, look at you, George." I grinned. 3 days, huh? Maybe you were right." She laughed. "I told you, nature's patient, but she knows what she's doing." That night when I got home, I noticed something else. The tightness in my shoulders, while the tension that had been constant for months, was gone. And for the first time in years, I slept straight through the night. No tossing, no groaning, no waking up at 3 a.m. searching for a comfortable position. Just sleep, deep and peaceful. The next morning, my daughter came by unexpectedly. When she saw me standing by the stove frying eggs, she froze. "Dad," she said, "you're up early." "Yeah," I said, flipping the eggs, "and I'm not in pain." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" I nodded. "Just a little sore, but nothing like before." She smiled, that warm, relieved smile that only a daughter can give. "What changed?" she asked. I pointed at the little bottle of oil on the counter. Clara's secret weapon, I said, grinning. Susan picked it up, read the label, and said, "Black sesame oil? You're kidding." "Nope. 1 spoon of courage, 1 massage at a time." We both laughed. And for the first time in months, the sound filled the house again. That night, I thought about how strange it all was. How something so simple, something I'd ignored all my life, could bring such change. Maybe it wasn't just the oil. Maybe it was the act of believing again, of letting go of hopelessness long enough to give something new a chance. And as I sat there in the quiet, I realized something else. Pain had made me forget how to listen, to my body, to my spirit, to life itself. But healing, even in its smallest form, had started to teach me again. It wasn't just my back that was getting better. It was me. Before going to bed, I looked out the window. The moonlight shimmered on the trees, and for a moment I felt a deep, calm gratitude. Not for being pain-free, I wasn't there yet, but for being on the way. Sometimes that's all we need. Not a miracle, not perfection. Just a sign that the body still remembers how to heal, that it hasn't given up on us yet. And I knew then, as sure as the night was quiet, that this was only the beginning. When something starts to change your life, even in small ways, you want to understand why. That's how I felt after that first week with the black sesame oil. The pain wasn't gone, but I could move, sleep, live again. And that made me curious. Could something so simple really be that powerful? One morning, while sipping coffee, I opened my laptop and started searching. At first, I didn't expect to find much, maybe a few old articles or alternative blogs. But what I discovered surprised me. Study after study from places like Harvard, the National Institutes of Health (NIH), and Kyoto University in Japan kept mentioning the same thing. Black sesame seeds and their oil contain a powerful compound called sesame, a natural antioxidant and anti-inflammatory agent. Apparently, sesame works by reducing the activity of enzymes that trigger inflammation in the body. In simple terms, it helps quiet down the overactive signals that cause pain and swelling, especially in the joints and spine. It also supports the production of something called NAD+, a molecule that helps our cells repair themselves and stay young. I leaned back in my chair, reading line after line, my coffee growing cold beside me. It wasn't just an old wives' tale. There was real science behind what Clara had shared. I even found a 2021 paper from the Journal of Functional Foods that said black sesame oil could enhance mobility and reduce oxidative stress markers in elderly adults. That phrase, elderly adults, hit home. They were talking about people like me. The more I read, the more it made sense. Pain, especially chronic back pain, isn't just about bones or muscles. It's inflammation, those tiny fires burning inside our tissues. And over the years, those fires never stop. They just smolder quietly, stealing energy, flexibility, and joy. Black sesame oil, according to the research, doesn't just mask the pain like a pill does. It calms those fires. It nourishes the tissues, supports circulation, and even strengthens the cartilage. It's nature's way of saying, let me help your body remember how to heal itself. What fascinated me most was how ancient this knowledge was. Thousands of years ago, people in India and Japan were using sesame oil for massages, calling it the food for the bones. And now modern science was catching up, putting data behind what traditional healers had known all along. I sat there smiling, shaking my head. All those years of chasing pills and prescriptions, and the answer was sitting quietly on grocery store shelves, waiting to be rediscovered. That afternoon, Clara stopped by again, carrying her usual warmth with her. "I see you're walking easier," she said. "I am," I replied, grinning. "You might have just saved my life." She laughed. "No, George, you did. You gave your body a chance." We sat outside, the sun gentle on our faces, and I told her about everything I'd learned. She nodded knowingly. My grandmother used to say, "What grows from the earth can heal what the earth made." Guess she was right all along. As she left, I thought about how disconnected I'd become from those simple truths. Somewhere along the way, we traded natural wisdom for convenience and faster fixes, stronger pills. But our bodies, especially as we age, don't always need stronger. They need smarter. They need gentleness. They need patience. That night, I warmed the oil again, massaging it into my back like a ritual. The smell, the warmth, the calm. It felt sacred somehow. Not religious, but deeply spiritual. A kind of gratitude between my body and me. As I rubbed the oil into my skin, I thought about what those studies had said about blood flow and tissue repair. I imagined the oil sinking in, feeding the muscles, quieting the inflammation, mending the damage of years. And for once, I didn't feel broken. I felt cooperative, as if my body and I were finally working on the same team. I started adding black sesame seeds to my breakfast too, sprinkled over oatmeal, mixed with honey, sometimes even blended into my smoothies. Every bite felt like an act of renewal. I wasn't just feeding my stomach anymore, I was feeding my hope. A few weeks later, I went for a checkup. My doctor, the same one who used to tell me, "It's just your age," looked puzzled. "You seem lighter," he said, flipping through my notes. "I am," I said simply. "Less pain, more energy." "What changed?" I smiled. "I found something nature's been keeping from us." He chuckled. "Well, whatever it is, keep doing it." That night I wrote a note in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. It said, "Healing doesn't always come in white coats or prescription bottles. Sometimes it comes in the quiet lessons of the earth, in seeds, in oils, in patience. Maybe we don't grow old because we age. Maybe we age because we stop listening." I closed the notebook and sat in silence for a while, letting those words settle. Because that's what I had learned. Pain isolates, but understanding reconnects. And understanding, I realized, is the most powerful kind of medicine there is. There's something powerful about routine. For months, my days had been ruled by pain, predictable in all the wrong ways. But now, for the first time in years, I was building a different kind of routine. One that wasn't about surviving the day, but about living it. It started simply. Every morning before breakfast, I'd warm a small bowl of black sesame oil and massage it gently into my back. The warmth always made me pause. It was almost like my skin was sighing with relief. Then I'd stretch, slowly, carefully, the way Clara had shown me. No rushing, no proving anything, just moving, breathing, feeling. After that, I'd fix myself a small breakfast. Oatmeal with blueberries, a spoonful of honey, and a sprinkle of black sesame seeds on top. I never used to think much about food. I ate whatever was easy, whatever was quick. But now, each bite felt intentional. Fuel, not filler. I learned that the small choices, the ones we dismiss, are the ones that decide how we feel. The sum of small choices makes all the difference, Clara had said, and she was right. Around mid-morning, I'd walk. Not far, just down the block and back. But I walked tall again. My steps were slower, yes, but they were mine. Every movement felt like a quiet victory. I'd noticed things I hadn't seen in years. The way the light filtered through the trees, the laughter of kids on bikes, the smell of grass after the rain. Pain had dulled those details. But now, they were vivid again. I started keeping a little notebook. Nothing fancy, just a few pages to track how I felt each day. At first, it was about the pain. Less stiffness this morning. Back felt stronger after walk. But after a while, the notes changed. They became about life. Made breakfast and listened to jazz. Ethan called. We laughed about old baseball games. Felt grateful today. Somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't documenting recovery anymore. I was documenting living. Evenings became my favorite part of the day. I'd sit on the porch, the bottle of oil on the small table beside me, and watch the sunset. The golden light would hit the fence just right, and I'd think about all the years I'd spent rushing, all the years I didn't know how to slow down. Funny how it took pain to teach me stillness. Sometimes my daughter would stop by after work. She'd notice how I moved around more easily now, how I didn't groan every time I got up. "Dad," she said one evening, "you're different." I smiled. "No, sweetheart, I'm just back." She laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. I think she saw it too. The light coming back into my face, the steadiness in my steps. Even my grandson noticed. "Grandpa," he said, "you don't walk funny anymore." I laughed so hard I had to sit down. "Guess I don't, buddy. Guess I don't." One Saturday, we went to the park together. He wanted to throw the baseball around again, something I hadn't done in over a year. I hesitated at first, afraid that familiar stab of pain would return, but it didn't. I threw the ball once, twice, each time a little stronger. Ethan's laugh filled the air, bright and free, and for a moment, I felt like time had rolled back. "Nice arm, Grandpa," he shouted. I smiled, blinking away the tears that came too easily these days. Not tears of pain, but gratitude. That night I sat with my journal again and wrote, "Healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about becoming someone new, someone softer, wiser, more alive." And I believed it, because healing had changed more than my back. It had changed my heart. I started eating better too. More greens, fewer processed foods. I learned to respect my body's limits, to rest when I needed to drink more water, to stretch before I sat down to watch TV. Little things, ordinary things. But together, they built a life that felt extraordinary. Sometimes people think transformation means starting over, new diets, new gyms, new doctors. But for me, it was the opposite. It meant returning to simplicity, to patience, to gratitude. Now every time I warm that little bowl of oil, it feels like a quiet prayer. Not for strength, not for youth, but for balance. For the ability to wake up each day and say, "Today, I'll take care of you." To my body, to my spirit, to this 70-year-old man who still has so much living left to do. And maybe that's the real secret. Not the oil itself, but the care it represents. Because when you start treating yourself with kindness, your body listens. It remembers how to heal. So yes, I still have pain now and then. Some days my back reminds me that I'm not 20 anymore. But those days don't own me. I move, I breathe, I live, on my terms. And when I pass the mirror now, I no longer see a man defeated by age or pain. I see someone who learned how to begin again. It's been months now since that day Clara handed me that little bottle of oil across the fence. Sometimes I still look at it, the dark glass, the simple label, and can't believe how much my life has changed. Not because of magic, not because of luck, but because of something deeper, a choice to believe in small beginnings. These days, my mornings look different. I still wake early. Old habits die hard. But instead of groaning at the first movement, I stretch, breathe, and thank my body for another day. The pain that once ruled me has quieted to a whisper, barely noticeable, like a shadow at noon. I make my breakfast, humming softly as I move around the kitchen. The smell of coffee fills the air again, rich, dark, alive. I sprinkle sesame seeds over my oatmeal and smile at the simple beauty of it. It's funny how the things we used to take for granted become sacred once we've lost them. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the window as the morning light pours in. The man I see now isn't the same one who sat in the dark months ago, wondering if life was over. He stands taller, moves slower maybe, but with purpose. There's peace in his eyes, the kind that comes not from being without pain, but from learning to live beyond it. The other day, my grandson Ethan came running into the house, baseball glove in hand. "Come on, Grandpa, let's go to the park." And without hesitation, I said, "Let's go." No excuses, no pretending, just living. At the park, the air was crisp and clean. We tossed the ball back and forth, his laughter ringing through the trees. Every throw, every catch, every shared smile felt like a miracle. Not because my body was perfect, but because I was present, alive, free. When we got home, Susan hugged me tighter than usual. "You look happy, Dad," she said. "I am," I told her. She smiled. "You know, you're an inspiration to us." I laughed softly. I don't know about that. I just stopped giving up. That night, as the house grew quiet, I sat by the window with my journal. The moonlight spilled across the pages as I wrote. I used to think growing old meant losing things, strength, memory, independence. But now I see it differently. Aging isn't about loss, it's about becoming. Becoming gentler with yourself, wiser with your choices, and stronger in ways that don't show in mirrors. I paused for a moment, listening to the soft ticking of the clock, then continued. Today I'm not afraid of growing older, because I've learned that healing doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward, carrying your scars like medals of survival. I closed the notebook and leaned back, feeling the warmth of gratitude settle deep inside me. The kind of gratitude that doesn't come from comfort, but from the journey it took to find it. I still use the oil every evening, not because I have to, but because it reminds me of how far I've come. It's become more than a remedy. It's a ritual of self-respect. A moment each day where I say to myself, "You made it." When I talk to friends my age, I tell them about it, not as advice, but as a story, because that's what this is. Not a miracle, not a cure, but a story of second chances. And we all need one of those, don't we? Some listen politely, some nod skeptically, and that's okay. I don't try to convince anyone. I just tell them what happened to me, how I went from pain and fear to movement and joy, not overnight, but through patience, nature, and faith in the body's quiet wisdom. If someone had told me a year ago that a simple natural oil could help me reclaim my life, I would have laughed. But now when I walk outside and feel the sun on my back, when I bend to pick up something without flinching, when I lift my grandson in my arms, I don't laugh. I thank, because I know what it feels like to lose yourself to pain, and I know what it feels like to find your way back. So if you're reading this, if you wake up stiff, tired, hurting, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me back then. Don't give up on your body. It hasn't given up on you. Nature has more to offer than we imagine. Sometimes it's not about fighting the pain, but listening to it. And sometimes the solution isn't in a prescription. It's in a seed, a leaf, a drop of oil, a little act of hope. So I ask you, do your mornings start with pain too? Do you ever wake up and think, maybe this is just how it is now? If you do, please don't believe that voice. You're not done. It's not too late to feel alive again. Share your story. Tell someone what you've tried, what's helped you, what still hurts. Because when we share our pain, we share our strength. And that strength, that shared humanity, is what keeps us going. If this story touched you, share it with someone you love. Someone who wakes up every day fighting the same battle you once thought you couldn't win. Because maybe, for them, hope will come the same way it came for me. Quietly, kindly, and just in time. Don't resign yourself. Healing is possible. Not through miracles, but through patience, care, and the courage to start again.